So everybody here in the panel today, and I'll give a bio and an introduction on each one of them, but fantastic, wonderful ladies that work in our industry. Some 5 years or so, Stacy with 20 plus years in the industry. But the idea is to, walk through their lives. How has their career been so far? What made them to be part of it to begin with? And the struggles, the challenges, and really help us overall as an industry. How can we do better to retain the ladies that we have and really to recruit more into this business? So with that, I will get started with their bio. So I have to my left, Aubrey Parum. She's an asphalt technician at Delek. Aubrey is an asphalt technician based in Big Spring, Texas. She has worked for Delek for over 2 years and opportunity to explore and understand new processes. Whether mastering a new asphalt grade, decoding the complexities of different polymers, or familiarizing herself with cutting-edge instruments, Aubrey appreciates the constant learning opportunities her position offers. Very awesome. Then I have Melissa Benavides. She is the Bituminous Branch Manager, Flexible Pavement Section at Materials and Test Division, TxDOT. Melissa is a PE, and she's graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering and a Bachelor of Arts in Italian. She has been working with TxDOT for over 10 years. Throughout her career, Melissa has focused on pavement forensics, field investigations, pavement design, and materials engineering. Currently, she works in the Flexible Pavement Section, overseeing the operations of the 4 hot mix labs. Next, we have Isabel Salazar. She is a Central Design Lab Technician at Texas Material Group in the North area. She has been in the construction industry for 7 years, 3 years in a field position. She transitioned from admin role to pursue a field job to establish a stable career for herself and her growing family. After spending 3 years as a QC technician, Isabel remains passionate about every aspect of her job. She takes pride in the belief that her work significantly impacts her community. It brings her immense joy to drive over a road and reflect on how she designed the mix. And last but not least, we have Stacy Rowh. Stacy is a registered professional PE. She's a registered professional engineer in Texas with nearly 25 years of expertise in the flexible pavement design and construction. She holds a Bachelor of Science and a Master in Engineering, Civil Engineering from Texas A&M University. She began her career as a researcher at the Texas A&M Transportation Institute and later served as the technical director for a large family-owned asphalt paver producer. As the president of HP2, I'm sorry, because I forgot to mention, she's the owner and president of HP2 Engineering and Testing. Her experience spans various projects, including pavement forensics, thickness and mix design, stabilization designs, and pavement recycling procedure development. As you can see, it's a very different roles, different areas of the industry, but a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, and I'm looking forward to hear their story. So with that, let's get this started. My first question will be for you, Isabel. So as mentioned in the bio, you said that you started as HR. You started in the admin role, and then you moved into HR, and then eventually you ended up going to the technical QC side. How did that happen? Tell us a little bit about your story and journey so far.
So I started off as a receptionist. I was there for like 8 months. And then I had HR experience from my previous company. So then they lost somebody in HR, so Z, my then boss, immediately was like, hey, you have HR experience, like, let's go. And I was just like, sure, get me out of this receptionist role. Like, I don't want to be answering phones forever. That was just my foot in the door.
Yep.
And then I did HR for 3 years, I think, almost 4. And then I had my kid, and I was like, I don't know if this is what I want to keep doing for the rest of my life. Nothing wrong with it, right? But it was just like, I want more. I want to be challenged. I want to do more. And then I want my kid to see me like I saw my mom. I was like, man, my mom is like a hustler. Like, she can do it all. Like, and I wanted my kid to see me like that. And so I talked to Z about it, and I was like so nervous when I talked to her about it, because I was like, man, she's gonna be like, you're fired, like go kick rocks. And so I was like, hey, like I'm not happy where I'm at, like can we talk about it, like where can I go? And so she was like super, super supportive, and she was like, basically like, what do you want to do, and where do you see yourself, and you know, gave me that talk. And she's like, you know what, I hate to lose you, but wherever you go, just own it.
There you
and
go.
Then I landed in the QC department because I saw that you were in the QC department. So she's actually my QC boss, my old former QC boss.
Yep.
So Luiza was managing the central lab, and then Brenda was there, another girl, right? And I was like, man, that's like amazing to have like a lab full of women. And that was like my cheerlead, like that was my cheer squad. It was like an Asphalt sisterhood, and it was just like, let's get it. Like it was like, who run the world, girls? Like it was wonderful to come into a lab full of women. It's like, it's wonderful. I mean, the energy, just women like bouncing ideas off each other, and it was just, I was like, I'm home.
Yeah, there are a couple of few takeaways for me. You know, is that kind of back to what Emily was saying, if you can be me, if you can see me, you can be me, right? When you see people in roles that you never imagined yourself being capable of, or not necessarily capable, but like even whether this would be a good fit for you, and it kind of inspires and is a great thing to do. And again, role model your mother, being a hustler and everything. And the same thing for all of us here and so many other ladies that we have in our industry is watching them and how they behave and what they're doing and how successful they are is really a drive for us to continue working towards our own career and owning it. So that's awesome. And I think the third thing that I'm going to mention and highlight, because I think for everybody in this room as leaders and managers and dealing with people day in and out is a perfect opportunity to remember that when people approach you about, hey, maybe this is not challenging me enough, what else could I do? Be the mentor and be the champion for that person. Don't be holding anybody back, because sometimes, obviously, we have great people that work for us, and as sad as it is to see them go because they're excellent at what they do, it's also very exciting to see their success later on as they move into the next thing. So it's just a couple of things to highlight that I think is a great story, Isabel, and we're happy to have you and happy that you switched over on a different role.
Yeah.
So. One thing that I want to follow up with you, Isabel, is, and I think another example of what people can do on the retention of talent. When Zinder and you were talking about opportunity in our company specifically, I had a position open at the time that you kind of got interested on, and you reached out to me. And at that point, you didn't really know much of what QC was about, right? So I want you to tell the group what happened, because there was, if I recall correctly, there was about 1 or 2 weeks experience that I invite you to the lab as a, hey, you don't need to accept the opportunity right now, but I want to know you and I want you to know what we do. So tell the group, how did that go for you?
Yeah, that's true. So after I sat down with Z, she was like, this is open, this position's open, this position's open. I was like, QC, like, I think that's where I want to come from, you know. We had so many great people come from QC, and I was like, I think that's probably like the best for my career. And so she was like, okay, like, let's do it. And then I guess you had the idea to open the doors to me, and it was like 2 weeks. And so I got to go into the QC lab every day for 2 weeks and learn what a rice was and learn what a mold was. And basically, like, when Netflix offers you like a 7 free day trial, that's what it was, you know.
It was basically
it's like, do I like it? Do I want to keep it? Yeah, like, let's go.
And I think that was win-win for both ways, right? For me as a hiring manager and for her as a person, just completely changing the path. It's such a great idea and things. And thankfully, we're in the same company and we're able to do that because it was a simple transition, right? Obviously, I understand when you're hiring somebody completely new, it's a different story. But it's just something to keep in mind because we do offer a lot of different roles. And I think, Stacy, I'll have a question for you later on this. I think we got to be creative about how we do and where do we put people for their success. So appreciate that feedback, Isabel. I'll move on to Aubrey. You started at Delek as a kind of a part-time through high school, just looking to get some income. And I think you mentioned to me that at that time, in your mind, you were going to pursue the chemical degree, and eventually you kind of got, no, I'm sorry, nursing. My bad. The chemical is what she is today. So nursing is what you were aiming for, and eventually through that experience and obviously mentorship and somebody talking and teaching you about something else that you didn't know at that point, it directed your path somewhere else. Can you walk us through your experience from beginning to today?
So I'm from a very small town where oil field runs the town. And so I had a lot of family friends and family members that worked at the refinery who told me about an opportunity to come out part-time, and it was build your own hours, 20 hours a week, $10 an hour. And so it was just fit us in your schedule when you can. And so it was really nice to do after high school before my second job. And so I had been accepted into Texas Tech for nursing school and had done all my prereqs, was about to go into that. And I got to work under my boss, who I'm currently with now, and with all of my coworkers for 3 years, doing that through high school and then through my prereqs. And my boss came to me and said, you know, as somebody said earlier, type A personalities kind of stick together. So you get 8 type A personalities in a lab together, and it really, you mingle well with people. And so they told me that I was a good fit, and I needed one more chemistry class, and they encouraged me to just go do that chemistry. And then I could come on full time when there was the next position available. So my boss, that was at the time part-time, he encouraged me to do that, and so did my coworkers.
Awesome.
So kind of just like skirt, just really fast out of nowhere.
You know, and again, we offer summer internship. We offer this part-time opportunities. I think most of our companies have that in their curriculum. But basically, one thing that I always tell people is don't assume that you know what they want. Ask the question and communicate. Because sometimes we initially, this is like just a short term, a couple months for her. But well, you never know. In her case, she actually got a passion and a drive through the process and through her experience. And it didn't take much for her to switch over and continue on board with the company. So another great example of ways that we can ask the question, get to know the people, and help them through their career path is an excellent thing. And I think you mentioned to me that I think the group that you work with is maybe about 8 people, give or take, and half of that are ladies. Is that correct?
Yes, I was the 4th woman out there. And so we're now half and half. We're split. There's no more arguments.
There you go. How does that feel for you? Do you think it helped through your decisions? Like, did it make a difference at all, being that it's more, more inclusive potentially?
Yeah, it was. One of my sisters works out there, and then some family friends actually work in the lab also. So having known them growing up and them encouraged me to do that, it made me feel comfortable enough to ask questions about chemistry, ask questions about, well, how do I get to the next step of this hiring process, and they were very encouraging about helping me pick out the chemistry classes, which 4 that I needed that were gonna work well with what we did in the lab. And so they were very, very encouraging.
Yeah, that's important. We gotta be champion and be part of the success of everybody. So that's an excellent story. I'll move on to Melissa next. Melissa, you have a total of 10 years strictly with the DOT. Working in different roles. Some, I think, at the beginning of her career, more engineering focused, then eventually more management role. Share, I know 10 years is a lot of story, but tell us a little bit about how it went about with you. Why did you choose TxDOT to begin with and all that?
Sure. So for me, so why I chose TxDOT is my senior year, my last class, I took a pavement class, and I really liked that. And I actually did have a design offer, so I knew I wanted to be in the transportation world, and so I had actually already accepted the design offer when I had TxDOT come back and offer me a position, and I knew that I was going to enjoy pavements more, so I ended up going with TxDOT. And so initially I started as an engineering training in TxDOT's pavement forensics group. And so I did spend a lot of time out in the field, going to projects across the state, and doing data collection for non-destructive testing. And so up front, a lot of my time was data collection, data processing, And after a few years, my lead worker for that group retired. So then I transitioned into that lead role where I was no longer going out in the field as much, but I was doing the data analysis for all of the projects that my group was working on. And so I would look at the data and come up with conclusions as to what the cause of the problem was and give my recommendations for the repair strategies and presenting that to the districts. And then I had the opportunity to go to Flexible Pavements Lab and keep doing forensics, which I really liked, but from the material side. And so with the lab testing and being in that lab environment. And I did do that for about a year and a half. And I still felt like I had a lot to learn, but then I had the opportunity to go to the Austin district and become the pavement engineer. And so for me, I thought that was a good opportunity because thus far I had only been on the division side, so I really wanted to go to the district and get that district experience. And although I already knew the pavement design process, I thought it was important for me to do it myself from beginning to end. And so I did do that for about 2 years. And then I had the opportunity to come back to Flexible Pavements at the time as the branch manager. And so I did hesitate because, one, I was happy where I was at, and I really enjoyed what I was doing at the Austin district, but I did have a little bit of a feeling of having unfinished business with FlexPave, and also this time it would be an official managerial role, so that would have been new. And so I've been back for about 2 years now, and so basically overseeing the operations. And so I know it sounds like I've moved, but I think in general I try to stick to that same field, and I think part of it is I try to just look for growth potential, but building on what I already know. So yes, I want to keep learning, but not necessarily in a completely different field exactly. Yeah. And so I just look at it almost like you keep on adding to your arsenal in a way.
100%. And as you can tell, there's a commonality here. Everybody's looking to develop and to get better and growth. And this is, people want to be challenged. And if we knew that, we would be so much better at helping them to get there. A question that I have for you, Melissa, I know you, there's no question in my mind that men and women are wired differently. It's just, we are different, right? But we have our skill sets and we offer great things in different areas. But I think for women, there is that, and I heard this actually off of a presentation where women go through a checklist. If we're seeking something that we think we'll be good at, we go through a checklist. Do I do this? Yeah, check. Do I do that? Check. And you keep going. If you miss one, there's a possibility that you're going to be like, I don't know if I can do this. So my question to you is, you mentioned in a conversation that we had that you wanted to go back to TxDOT, and you got accepted and got an offer, and you still kind of got a little hesitancy about, am I ready? Do I feel prepared for this opportunity? Do you have anything that you want to share in regards to that?
Right, so normally TxDOT will give you a week to accept or reject an offer, and each time I've taken the full week because one, I'm happy where I'm at, but also in this case it was very different because it was also going to be on the manager side, and like I said, I had only spent like a year and a half in FlexPave, so it wasn't like I knew everything. I was basically familiar with everything, but didn't know it from beginning to end, and so that was a little bit on, hesitation on, okay, am I ready to, I knew that I was familiar with everything, but it was more kind of not really upfront saying, okay, I can grow into checking all those boxes, right? I was like, okay, I can check a few, but am I ready to jump into that? And so I think it's really, kind of having this mentality of like, you know what, I think I have the skills to grow into it. And even though I'm not checking all the boxes all at once, I'm going to do that as time goes on.
Yeah. And I don't know, so that's a great story because, like I mentioned on that check in the box, I think the statistics have shown that men are more likely to apply to a job even though they don't check a couple boxes versus women. So it's just something for us as hiring managers to keep in mind, and as managers of people, having those conversations and support one another. Like I have done this a couple of times actually within our company. If I knew a lady was potentially looking into moving up and applying for a promotion, I would specifically take the time to be like, hey, I heard this, how are you feeling? Like, let's talk about it. Let me help you through this process, or finding, even going through other peers or managers to support that person, because we know the person is capable of, and we know they're probably the most qualified for the job, but it's still, I think, in the back of our mind is, and there's also, I'll add the fact that there is a big gap in age currently, right? We see that with TxDOT, we see that in the industry overall. So a lot of the young talent have that, well, I'm not 50, 40 plus years old, so am I ready to take on this role? So I think it's very important that we talk about this and we support and we just help to lift one another and take all those fears away. So I appreciate the comment and the feedback. So we'll move on to Stacy. I'm really looking forward to your story, Stacy. I know 25 years is a lot, and one thing you've shared with me before about your whole journey, scholarship that you had, and you ended up potentially losing. You decided to get married, got kids coming on the way, and then eventually went back to school while raising a family, while working. So this is really awesome, and I don't know if I can say badass, but badass. And I just want you to walk us through your journey and how it happened for you.
Well, I think Gino and I actually share something in common, is that we both got into this business by accident, I heard you say one time. And so I kind of grew up with not very much of anything, and kind of a tumultuous home life. So I kind of watched that and decided a long time ago when I was a kid I was never going to live like that, and my kids wouldn't live like that. So I always worked hard. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to beat everybody. I wanted to win. And very competitive. And so graduated from high school in Del, Texas, which is outside of Tyler. And I had academic scholarships to A&M. And at that time, I was going for a business degree because I knew some friends in high school, their dad was a stockbroker, lived in a big fancy house, had everything they wanted. I thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a stockbroker. And so I go off to A&M. I've got money, scholarship. I did pretty well. I'm pretty smart, if you don't know. And anyway, I had a real good time that year. And I got my ass kicked right out of school at the end of that year. Something about a 0.7 they didn't quite agree with. And it was amazing how easy it was to get that, actually. But I moved down to South Texas and lived with my grandfather, met my ex-husband. We got married and had kids. And I had 2 boys, both February 94, February 95. He was working at a plastics plant, and I was taking care of kids, and I got bored. I was like, I need to go do something. So I started back at Victoria College. And the University of Houston has a branch in Victoria. And at that time, you went to Victoria, the junior college, for the first 2 years, and then UHV for the last 2. And you could get a business degree. I already knew that probably wasn't going to work out. Or you could be a teacher. And I thought, well, I'm good at math. I'll be a math teacher. And the junior college hired me to be a tutor. And I sat in a room all day. People would come to me for help. And there were, 40-year-olds going back to school, doing whatever. And I thought, good Lord, I will destroy a child. I cannot be a math teacher. I did not have the patience for that, right? So I was taking trigonometry, and my teacher was a retired mechanical engineer from Exxon. And I went and asked him one day about engineering, why he chose that. And he said, well, it gives you the most opportunity, right? You could be a math teacher or a stockbroker, an engineer, investment banker. You could do whatever you want. You'll probably get more job opportunities, more job offers than anybody else out there. I was like, all right, well, that sounds good. That's what I'm going to do. And one of the things that always tore me up was all I ever wanted. I only applied to one college when I graduated from high school. There was only one place I wanted to go. And so it kind of always tore me up a little bit that I lost that opportunity. So I took calculus and physics, did all this stuff at the junior college, making good grades, and went back and talked to an advisor at A&M in engineering. And he was like, well, and I said, look, just because I acted like a dumbass doesn't mean I am one. And so here's my transcripts, right? And he was like, yeah, well, just reapply and put my name down and I'll let you back in. And so I went on, and my ex-husband, he was also going to school full-time and working full-time. And we had 2 little boys. And I finished my bachelor's degree, and I went to work for a land development firm in Tyler. We were doing Walmart's and Lowe's site development plans all over the place. And if you haven't done that, there's not much to it. In Walmart and Lowe's, they want the same thing on every site. So you just put the print, plop the building down in the middle of the lot and draw your water line and sewer line, do a little grading. And it was boring as you could imagine. I thought, I went to school for this. I mean, good Lord, what am I doing? Well, 9/11 happened. And I worked for a small family business, and I was a new kid. I got laid off, and there were no jobs to be had at that time. TxDOT wasn't hiring, nobody was hiring. And I had 3 of the 4 years of experience I needed to get my PE. And I knew I could go back to A&M and get my master's, and that would count for my last year. And I could work part-time at the college and have full-time state benefits, and it's pretty important when you got little kids. So that's what I did. We packed up and left Tyler, headed back to College Station. And there in the master's program, I got to know Tom Scullion at TTI. Y'all know him, probably have heard of him. And so he hired me to stay on in the flexible payments group afterwards. And then I was there for several years. I had a consulting business in College Station that I sold to Terracon in 2011. When I left TTI in 2007, I started my consulting business. That was in May of 2007, and we did forensics we had interagency agreements with TxDOT. We did forensics all over the state. I knew TxDOT folks everywhere. And I thought, well, I'm gonna go work with TxDOT. Well, that was May 2007, and for those of you who have been here long enough to remember, in September of 2007, TxDOT had a huge budget shortfall. So they pulled all their testing back in-house. And fortunately for me, I had the opportunity to get to know a fellow named A.P. Boyd with the AGC, and he lived in Bryan College Station. And he got me involved with the AGC, and he brought me around to the monthly letting was in Austin. He dragged me around to all the luncheons. He promoted me to contractors. I'm real good at spec review and getting contractors out of trouble. And luckily, they tend to stay in trouble, so it kept me busy. But just with that relationship, just with the AGC, I got to know Robert Hall in North Texas and carriers, and I got to know the Clarks. And, it's funny, I met A.J. Clark at a fish fry in Austin. And just, a few months later, and AP introduced me to him. I was at the Houston AGC luncheon, and I walk in, well, AJ's sitting there, somebody I knew, so I sit down with him, and he was sitting there with a guy named Mike Pruitt that worked for Angel Brothers at the time. And they were having some trouble on a job in Cleveland. And TxDOT was wanting them to do different things that they just felt like they needed to do. So AJ told Mike, he said, well, this is the girl you need to talk to. So I went to Baytown and met with the Angels. I was probably somewhere around 2009. And I was able to help them out. And later on, in 2014, they had some trouble in San Antonio. QC managers got into a little bit of a jam. And Bill Thomas, who came from Knife River, was also working with Angel Brothers, Knife River and Bryan, and I'd known him for over 20 years. He told the Angels, hey, you need to go call this girl because TxDOT knows her and they trust her. She can come over here and help us get this fixed. Well, then the Angels knew me because I had also helped them out of a jam. And, you know, it was just really something. When I got to them in 2014, I know materials, I know specs, I know design, I know all that stuff. I had never worked for an asphalt paver producer, contractor. And I called. It took me a while to accept that job because it was way, way above my experience level. I mean, we were getting into all kinds of new things, right? And I called Robert Lee, he was still at Materials and Test, and Brett Haggerty down in San Antonio, Mike Ariano. And I'm like, hey, you know, I've got this job offer. It looks like it's pretty good, but I think there's going to be a lot of trouble with it, right? And they said, well, you're going to be stepping into a hornet's nest, but we'd love to have you out here. And just a lot of back and forth, and finally I, you know, decided to accept that job, and I moved from College Station to New Braunfels. And when I tell you it was like drinking from a fire hose, it was. We had the energy sector going. We had to pave 800,000 tons of mix in 18 months. We had state jobs going night and day. Patrick Buckley was there with me. And it was, I don't know, I think the Angels still might owe me a new liver, but it was something. And to say, if you've never read any of these books, like Good to Great or anything like that, when they talk to these CEOs and these people who are running these Fortune 500 companies, and you look for a common theme, the one that I can say is that you can never just take a job you're qualified for. You can't just be comfortable. You can't make lateral transitions, because that job opportunity I took with Angel Brothers elevated me and put me into a whole new level in this industry. And the experience I gained and the practical experience and the relationships that I've built and the support you have from the entire industry.
That's so important.
Those partnerships with contractors and TxDOT and material suppliers and everybody. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. I wouldn't be running a consulting business again and back out here again if I hadn't have had all of these opportunities and kind of, like I say, it's the relationships. It is getting outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And Luiza, you talk about a check. I'm not a checklist person. I just step off the ledge and hope I can fly,
Risk
right?
taker.
Yeah, and so
That's awesome.
I can't imagine doing anything else. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it. I'm incredibly proud that both of my sons have followed me to this industry, and are both certified binder technicians and work at the Texas Materials Baytown Terminal. And I had the opportunity to give a presentation at CPA last November, and they got to go out there with me to North Carolina. And there's a lot of folks, you get around and it doesn't matter where you go, you see people you know. And even out in North Carolina, and my boys were like, geez, Mom, do you know everybody? And well, I've been around a while. And anyway, the thing that I thought was the most awesome and that made me the most proud was all the people who welcomed my sons into this business and told them, I hope you like what you're doing because you're never leaving this industry, right? This is what you're doing from now on. So I can look around at people and got generations of families that have been in this business and followed father and mother and whatever. And so I got Nick Bando over here that I pretty well raised in the business, I think. And it's kind of my little stepson over there. But anyway, I'm just real proud to be here and be a part.
Thank you very much, Stacy. It's so important. I'm so glad you brought up the relationship aspect of our industry and how welcoming everybody really is. Everybody's always trying to, build the relationship. And Texas is huge, right? But the industry is so small, and you run into people that you know over and over and over again. And be ready. Be always ready. Be always prepared. Put your hand up and introduce yourself, tell your story, ask questions. Earlier today, I ran into the lunch line with the ladies, and next thing you know, we were sitting at the same table and didn't even know, right? So little things like that. I know it's a silly example, but we have a great group of people in this industry, and they are willing to help. So ask for the help. Be willing to tell your story. Be willing to talk and to get to know people, because we have a lot of people and a lot of connections, and that development and that, you know, growth is going to happen if you have the connections, for sure. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you sharing the story. We'll jump to the next question. This is for whoever wants to answer. Were there any specific roles, projects, or situations that you have been involved in that positively contributed to your professional and personal growth, or personal growth? Go ahead, Stacy.
So, you know, one of the things, and Luiza, you and I talked about this, and being a female in this industry, I can't say that I've ever felt challenged necessarily, or disrespected, or I just always kind of showed up and did my job and tried to be as best as I could be, and I always, you know, I never had those kind of struggles. But I will say, you know, just talking about that kind of story, I was 21 and 22 when my sons were born. So by the time I was 40, they were graduating from high school. And I had been a researcher and a consultant, and I worked that 8-to-5 job. And I might have to travel every now and then, but really I was home, and I could be home for my kids. And so by the time the angels were coming after me, my boys were out of high school. And you know, there's I guess a gap. There's a lot of opportunity for anybody in the industry if you want it. But when I went to work for Angels, and jobs are running 24 hours a day, and, you know, I'd have to leave New Braunfels at 3 in the afternoon and be in Laredo at 6 and be there. You know, I might take a nap in my truck outside the lab before I head back to New Braunfels at 3 in the morning to be there for the start of the next day. I couldn't have done that if I was still raising kids. I couldn't have, you know, there's a difference. There's a difference in your roles. And you just have to be aware of the expectations and what is out there, because there's an opportunity. You know, we've got, so Patrick, he's been in the lab business a long time and has all the certifications, and Band is the same way, but moved into a lab manager role, you know, and so with all the TxDOT jobs, and there's lots of record keeping, and just, you know, there's a lot to keep up with. And it really takes someone dedicated. If you've got a lot of TxDOT projects, it takes somebody dedicated to that. So there's an opportunity even in the lab to, you know, work a 9-to-5 job. Now, Patrick, he always had his laptop with him. I think Bandit does too, so they're available at all hours. But, you know, there's opportunity. But one of the things I had told Luiza is that in all the years that I've been doing, I never had a female apply for a QC technician job at an asphalt plant. And, you know, if you've got
that trend is changing. That's my hope.
But, I mean, if you're working, you know, you've got jobs running 24 hours a day. And we're running, you know, some of these guys are getting 80 hours a week. It's a challenge if you're a younger person and you're raising a family. And so, but there's a role out there for you. You just got to know the expectations and know where the opportunities are.
And as managers, I think it's a great point, Stacy, because we need to be creative. If we know that a female is applying to the job and they have a family to raise, kids to raise, and all that, I understand that there's only so much we can do. There is a job that needs to be done, but we got to be creative. Maybe there's some like data analysis, some QC data. Chuck, you probably can help me with all the control charts and all that stuff, right? There's a lot of opportunities on this industry that we can place people in a different role that may not require them to be 12 hours a day working in the lab, but to still be part of the technical lab team, but in a different capacity. So I think it's very important that we're mindful of that. And I promise you, there are probably a situation that is a win-win for you and for that person. We just need to kind of find those areas. Melissa, is there any circumstances, situation for you that has particular played a role in your growth and development that you want to bring up? I know, sorry, I'm going to jump into something that just crossed my mind. You were under a lady, Giselle Carrasco, right, for so long. I don't know if you want to highlight on that, how it was for you, if that helped you at all, or any situation at all.
Yeah, and so I would definitely consider her to be one of my mentors. She's the only female direct supervisor that I've had, but actually it didn't really feel like that kind of like supervisor to employee thing. I feel like everything that we worked on, it felt like very much a collaboration effort between us. And I think it was, and you know, that's why we worked very well, because we understood each other, you know, very well. And so I really, really enjoyed working with her the 2 years that I was able to spend with her. Yeah, I think that was very unique.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned to me that there was like this approach from Giselle in particular, as an example, right? A great role model for all of us, but where if you would ask a question, she would say something where like, hey, don't come to me because I am the one, because I'm your supervisor means I know everything. You're coming to me so we can brainstorm and we can bounce back and forth and find a solution together, right?
Right, and I feel like, and I will say that with me, I did come in already with a pavements background, but it was just knowing the district part of it. But I do consider her to be the person that I learned from the most in the shortest amount of time, because, I think that background helped. But she was, I think she was very encouraging, and she was the one that would point out to me, look, yeah, like you have these questions, but I don't know the answers either, right? Like, it's just that, yeah, we discuss and we come up with what the best solution is. So she was very good about pointing stuff out like that, kind of like, you know, it's like, she almost reassured me that I had learned the job, you know, like, and so. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's about that, how you approach people, right? Knowing, it just creates that very personable relationship where people are not, you're breaking the barrier and they're not afraid to come to you to ask questions, even though they may think it could be a silly question, right? It's just creating that environment that is healthy where collaboration is possible. So I think that's a great thing that we all could probably do a better job across the industry.
Right, and during that time, actually, most of it was during work from home, so I was also very mindful of her time. So again, like I would be working on, and I had my list of projects, and if I just had a question, I would just kind of leave it, and I would keep on working on other projects, and until I had maybe 3 questions or so, then I would give her a call and be like, okay, let's talk about this. Yeah. But it was like that. It was like, let's talk about this, and then we would come up, okay, this is the design option. Or sometimes it was like, you know what, let's give 2 recommendations, and then it's up to the area office to decide which ones works out for them better. So
awesome. Well, I'll move to Isabel now. Have you ever participated in any type of mentorship program? And if you haven't, would you think it would be beneficial?
So no, I have not participated in any mentorship program. So actually, I signed up for the Women of Asphalt mentorship program. So I signed up to be a mentee, and I'm really excited about it because I'm so fresh in the QC industry. Like, I think about it, I'm like, man, I've been in the construction industry for 7 years. That's a long time. But most of it was admin, and so QC's only been like 3. So I'm really looking forward to being a mentee and getting some support in that aspect so I can grow even more. So.
Yeah, and one thing that the group does, I know there's a whole community that works on that program, but they try to match based on the expertise, like what area you work, and obviously they will match you with a mentor from some other state, because obviously they don't want to put competitors and anything of that nature. So definitely I'm excited for you, and I'm glad you joined. How about you, Aubrey? Have you, and it can be an indirect mentorship too. It doesn't need to be necessarily a program.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it like a mentorship, you know, it's kind of like an unassigned role.
Yeah.
There's a woman in the lab who's been there for 18 years, and so she started out there before it was popular for women to be out in this men's field. And so she's been there a long time and has gained a lot of respect from the guys out there and from the managers. And so, you know, I look at her as like a mentor, and how does she talk to people? How does she handle situations? You know,
somebody you look up to.
Yeah, if something comes to my desk and I'm like, well, I don't know how to respond to this, I'd be like, what would Jennifer do? You know, so it's really helped me out a lot, to have her there, support me, answer phone
great.
calls, text if I ever have a question, and she's done a lot for me since I've been out there.
Yeah, and surprisingly, it's that people are observing us at all the time, right? Our direct reports, we gotta lead by example, and by acting in a certain way, by being encouraging and being a certain type of leader, you're probably teaching somebody indirectly how to be, or maybe potentially even how to not be as a leader when they get an opportunity. So it's definitely a good thing. And I think for me, one thing that I want to add also on my particular experience is I've never been necessarily a mentorship program per se, but I have had great people, many in this industry that are always, again, creating that connection and introducing me to leaders. And it's about not what people tell you in front of you, but it's what they talk about you when you're not in the room. That for me is what really matters, when you create such a reputation, such a relationship with people in the industry that they will bring your name even if you're not there to hear, because they think highly of you. And I appreciate for everyone that does that for their direct reports, their peers, or whoever they know. I think that's what we hope from the Women of Asphalt aspect. And we're going to be talking later about allyship with Angela, and that's what we emphasize is you got to be that champion for the lady in the industry. So we'll move on to the next question for Stacy. Are there any mentors or role models who have influenced your career path? You brought up a lot of names. I know that for sure there are a few. And are you currently being a mentor to somebody? You already kind of touched your kids, it's a legacy, your story, but is there any other particular thing?
Just as far as mentors, I mean, there are the names of the folks from TxDOT that I mentioned, Robert Lee, Mike Ariano, and Tom Scullion at TTI is still one. I can look around the room and there's, several of you I might call with questions or concerns from time to time, or to run over, ideas about this or that. But when I look back, it's funny because even when I was getting kicked out of A&M and I didn't know what my future was going to hold or what I was going to do next, then I ended up married and having kids, I was one of those on a career path that I wasn't going to get married till I was 30. I was going to be financially independent. I was going to never depend on anybody. I was going to be my own person, right? And if the things hadn't happened the way they had, by the time I was 26, I had some medical problems that I wouldn't have been able to have my own children. And so, it's funny to look back on things and just people you meet along the way and how things work out. And, I just, AP Boyd with the AGC, I think probably was the best relationship I ever made. And that probably did more to really get me out there in the industry. And he pushed me and he's brought my name up, like you mentioned. And he really put me out there in the industry and kind of got me, going down this path. But then just working with Bill Thomas, we had so many closed door kind of counseling sessions where I thought, Lord have mercy, what did I get myself into? Yeah. And, he's always been there to prop me up and promote me. And I can't thank him enough for everything he's always done for me in my career. And then Derek Angel is probably, one of my closest relationships in the industry, and somebody I just adore and really look up to. And, I no longer work with him, but I call and he picks up the phone and we talk about, what's going on. And so, I've had a lot of good role models along the way.
Yeah, that relationship, the mentorship structure is a great idea, but also, sometimes it happens organically. You don't need to call it a mentorship, but just that one-on-one hearing and asking questions and trying to help somebody, it's already part of that process. Melissa, could you share some insights about the skills or qualities that are essential for women's success in the asphalt industry based on your own experience?
Yeah, so for me, being at TxDOT, I think that being practical is very important in this industry. Us at MTD, we deal a lot with, research and new initiatives and new technology, and you really have to start. Some of it just sounds great and all, but I think right. So exactly. You have to stop and think: is this really practical, and is it capable of being implemented? But also, and it's not just what's the effort that it's going to take from me or my team to execute this, but also, how does it impact the contractor and the districts and all the other parties involved as well. So I think being practical and also understanding others' participation in that same role as well is essential. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Isabel, what are your thoughts?
I think persistence is...
Persistence. That's probably my answer too.
Persistence for sure. So I'm so new to the industry, and it's just like, I gotta be persistent. I've always been persistent, stubborn, whatever you wanna call it. Determined, whatever synonym you wanna use, I've always been persistent. And it's like, whether it's 5 times or 50 times, I'm gonna get it, like eventually. And it's like, don't get discouraged and don't limit yourself. Like, go ahead and be persistent and determined and try.
And it's that kind of thing where, like, sometimes a door, and you touched on this, Stacy, a door may close to you where at that moment it sounds kind of terrible, but things happen for a reason, and that door closing is giving you an opportunity for another door that you potentially never consider. So the persistence and keeping going and having that drive of like, let me try it again over and over. It's not about how many times you fall, but it's about getting up and trying it again. So I agree with you. I think it's a great trait to have. Stacy, what are your thoughts?
I think, we've talked about this, and I think if you're going to be successful in this industry, I think everybody in here has an awful lot of assertiveness and competitiveness. And it's kind of off topic maybe, but Luiza goes to Orange Theory Fitness, and if you don't know about this, I used to go too. And you wear this heart monitor, and it's like this high intensity interval training. And you watch a screen, and you want to be in different levels. You want to maintain for a certain amount of time. But you can see, you don't know who they are, but you can see what everybody else in the room is doing too on these screens. And so if you want to get into some good physical shape, you put some contractors in the Orange Theory where you're just competing against the person on the screen. And, but yeah, I think that's like the common thing is, we all have a drive and a desire to succeed, and we want to win. And
we want to win.
We want to win. And, a lot of us are competitors, have been competitive. We've worked together at times, we've been competitors at times. But, we're all a family here. And I think it's really something, to be a part of. Yeah,
and it's funny. It reminded me of a story too. Like sometimes competition can be seen as a negative thing, but it has a great aspect to it as well. You can definitely create a healthy competitive environment. I remember, I don't know all the details, but in the lab I had some silly like competition going where like, if you do something wrong, you're going to have to put money in the jar kind of situation. So there was a lot of like, nobody wants to make a mistake. Obviously, there was, again, it got to be healthy, but it's creating that environment where people feel comfortable enough to come and ask a question if they don't feel 100% confident about what they're about to do.
Yeah,
So.
And I think also taking those coaching and learning moments. I've made mistakes over the years that probably cost us some money, but figuring that out and getting it turned around, and we have folks, I won't say names, but he's right there in front of me, who made some mistakes and that cost us some money, and the thing was like, I just don't let me be surprised by something, and then we talk about, well, why did you do that? Okay, I understand where you're coming from, but maybe we should have gone this direction, and making sure they understood what the impact was to the business, that kind of thing. And so just being approachable and not talking down to folks and just respecting their time just as much as they respect yours, We're all here to learn and get better.
Yep.
Yeah.
Being mindful and respectful of each other's time is very good.
Yeah.
It's especially nowadays with all the teams and things changed after COVID. I feel like we need to be, sometimes we forget about that, think that people just, will be available always, but. Aubrey, what's your opinion about it?
Kind of going off of what Stacy said, willingness to learn and, if somebody messes up, which is me, my boss is back there, and I always know I mess up when I send a result, and he has these little catchphrases he uses. I'll either get that in a text message or an email, and I'm like, okay, let me just pull all that back up, because that's his way of being like, you should look into that, and I'm like, so willingness to learn, and he'll always call me and kind of work me through it if I need help. And so, but sometimes, having the confidence to he'll ask me to do something and I'm like, yeah, I've got this. And then like 2 minutes later, I'm like on Google. I'm like, what does this mean? And so, but I always figure it out. So
yes, that's awesome.
Willingness to learn.
Yeah, we have a lot of opportunity. Corey was just talking about it earlier, how many jobs and how much money for the infrastructure, right? So for anybody, the ladies here, for the ladies that will be watching this webinar eventually, if you have the drive and you seek to learn and seek to be hungry for that development, and I promise you, it will pay back. It will be good and you're gonna go far in this industry. So just show that, and for the mentors and the men in the room, make sure you support those developments as well. So we'll move on to the next question. I'll aim it to you, Melissa. What was the most challenging part of your journey so far? And then I'll also throw, looking back, could anything else have happened that would have made this obstacle a little bit easier for you?
Yeah, so I would say that last year was challenging for me, and that was just because it had a lot of different factors that basically created the perfect storm all in 1 year. And so I had just come back, and yes, I was already familiar with the operations, but it was really having to catch up, and get up to speed with everything. The managerial side was new to me. But then on top of that, we had the specifications rewrite, which happens every 10 years. We had new quality assurance initiatives. We had a lab campus move that happens once in a lifetime, or at least I don't want it to happen in my lifetime ever again. We had, with this job market, I did have to fully restaff our central lab, so we lost a lot of experience there. And so for me, it was, I was new to the position, so I really wanted to stay on top of everything. So I quickly fell into just this go, go, go mode. And so where I was just working all the time. And I know that Stacy talked about, having a family, then, your responsibilities there. But for me, it was actually on the opposite end that I was like, well, I have the time to devote, all this time to this, right? And so I did find it difficult to kind of get out of that mode. I'm still kind of, dealing with that. But I guess looking back, I would have said that I guess I could have established some boundaries up front and maybe to at least still have some personal time, and maybe it wouldn't have affected my relationships with my family and my friends as much. So
yeah, a lot of moving parts, a lot of
Yes.
things going on in your life, and hopefully we'll hear later today about mental health and work-life balance. I think we all could use some of that. And that's the thing, if you take some time to do that, you were probably going to be a lot even more. Your performance is going to increase. You're going to be more efficient. So there's so much gain out of it, right? And it's, so great point. Stacy, any comments as far as challenge? I know you have a lot of them, but one in specific, particular?
It's something, and I know we talk a lot about inclusion and diversity and things, but when CRH bought Angel Brothers in 2021, out of a 1,300 person organization, was the only female technical person or in the field or on projects, or, and so I really can't look back and think of a time that even in that situation, I was the only one, I can't really think of a time that I was ever really that challenged, I just always showed up and did my job, and if I didn't know what to do, I acted like I did, and but I knew somebody to call, and so it just I think all your challenges are overcome by building the right relationships, right?
Yeah.
And having the right support around you. I
And
think
from an
that's all it is.
acquisition standpoint, as such, again, you're merging two families, you're merging two cultures, and there's a lot that goes into that, right? So
Yeah.
having to start over and build that relationship all over again, it's a challenging on both sides. So
Right.
I can
Well,
definitely.
and so, and that, oh, well, I will say that in that transition, when you work for a large family business, you don't really have a job description. If you can figure it out, it becomes part of your job. So, you know, I was over the QC program on the production and the paving side. I would go to TxDOT to try to get spray pavers added to our jobs, much to Glenn's chagrin sometimes, and get things switched over, you know, like that. If we had problems on a job, I sat down with TxDOT for that. I ended up over our inventories and our rail orders and had to coordinate rail cars with the carriers because we were using their rail cars to carry our material into Houston down to Three Rivers. You know, sometimes I cleaned toilets because they needed cleaned. And, you know, it just kind of, you just do whatever it takes when you're in a family business. And then so in that transition, it was a challenge for me to kind of adjust to much less responsibility. That was a big challenge.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. To close this off, I'll ask the last question, and I'll start with Isabel. What is the one piece of advice you have for the ladies starting in the industry?
Man, going back to what Stacy said, man, take that leap, run, jump off the ledge, and figure out if you can fly later.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you sit there and you think about it, you're never gonna do it.
You're gonna overthink.
Yeah, you're gonna overthink it for sure. So like, I had just had my kid, and then I was like, well, it's chaotic enough. Let me go get a new job. Let me go restart my career. And it was like so much chaos, but like I thrived off of it. I'm starting to think like I thrive off chaos. Like I gotta be uncomfortable, you know, to be comfortable.
Yes.
And it's rewarding, honestly, to learn something new every day. And
I'm trying to remember the phrase now, but it was something about you can't grow being comfortable or something like that anyhow. But yeah, it takes courage, and it takes that uncomfortable environment for us to push through and power through. And again, I'll repeat this because every single one lady in this panel mentioned that they want to be challenged. So please challenge everybody that you work with, and let's be better, and let's continue progress in this industry. Melissa, what advice you have?
I mean, I would say, I think similar. I know that growing up, I always remember my fourth grade teacher had a poster that said, try your best and shine above the rest. And I took that and I lived by that. Again, I was also very competitive. But I think it wasn't, and really with myself, also trying to be like a perfectionist. But it wasn't until I was in college and now in my career that I think it really is try your best and shine, period, really, because I think everyone shines in their own way. It's not so much a competition. It's more just trying to be the best version of yourself that you can be.
Absolutely.
And that takes trying, right? Because you have to try and act on it, because otherwise down the line, you're gonna just be, wondering what if I would have tried? So I would say just go for it.
Awesome. Aubrey, what are your comments?
Again, with the confidence and assertiveness and your work life, being young, who started in an industry that was full of men, it's kind of hard to speak up sometimes, and that's something you have to learn. So I think just being able to find that balance of assertiveness, to have your voice heard when you need it to be, and taking the risks that you need to take to step out of your comfort zone. My job can get very day-to-day tasks get pretty tedious, and so we have a volunteer program that I've signed up for that's a fire team out there, and it's always something more to learn and more to try and step out of my comfort zone.
That's such a great advice. I love that. And for the male allyship, creating that environment, creating that opportunity for your team to, what are your thoughts? What do you think about this? You don't have to necessarily follow, but just creating that environment where people feel more comfortable, because that confidence is going to come with time. We are not born thinking that we know everything and we're the best of our category, right? That comes with experience and with people. They're forcing us to believe that we can do it, or, fake until you make it kind of situation too. That can help. Stacy, last comments to wrap this up? Advice?
Yeah, no, I mean, I just, I guess everybody just look for your next opportunity. I'm, proud to say Nick Banda hired him as a young technician, and I don't know, how old were you, 20, 21? Yeah, and so in the last 10 years, he's now moving into, next month, taking a QC manager role in the Waco area. So he's, been able to grow and learn. And the same with Patrick. He's moved into different things and on to bigger and newer opportunities. And, just don't take a job that you're just qualified to do. You need to always be looking to grow and do a little more. And even if you're not sure about it, just go do it. And there's enough people out here to help you, enough people that have been through it and done it. It's just always a phone call away for whatever you need.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate everyone and each one of you. It was a pleasure to get to know you and to share the stories here with this beautiful audience. Does anybody on the audience have any question that they would like to ask to the panel? We just talked about getting out of the comfort zone. I'm trying to get them out of the comfort zone right now. No questions? All right. Well, thank you very much, ladies. I really appreciate this. It was a wonderful time, and I hope everybody enjoyed as much as I did. So let's give them a big round of applause.